Today I'm joined by James McCann. James is the CEO of Clearstory and Everhaze. James was in the army for just over 3.5 years.
Yeah, 3.5, 4 years overall. Yeah.
And do you miss it now that you've been out so long?
I do. Do you know? We're still in a WhatsApp group with the original platoon, recruit platoon. You know, some of the lads, and still swapping stories. You know, from way back when. You know, we're all still very poignant about the whole thing.
I suppose, what first prompted you to join the Defence Forces?
Yeah, like I suppose my granddad of the same name was in the Defence Forces during the emergency, 1940 to 45, and like I'd known that and whatnot, but I'd say when I was about kind of 11 or 12, I started taking an interest in kind of like military history, you know, your World War IIs and all that kind of stuff, and I just seen the army as a career I just really wanted to do.
Yeah. And
you know, obviously you have your career guidance, you know, when you're kind of 13, 14 and onwards, you know, and I just go in because we had the 21st Battalion for the reserves, or for the FCA at the time, in the Coast Guard station down Dunleary, you know.
Oh, okay.
And they used to always kind of put the leaflets into the career guidance counsellor, so I just go in and I'd be like, just give me the leaflet. Do you know, you're trying to convince me to, you know, oh, you should do this, you do. He actually wasn't too bad. He told me I should go do business, you know.
Oh, really?
But I was like, just give me the leaflet. So that went on for years, and then when I was 17, actually before that, I think I was like 16 and a half, you know, and I went down to sign up, and they're like, you know, you have to be 17 by the time we accept your application. So that was that. And when I suppose I ended up having to go back and repeat my leaving cert because I was going for a cadetship, you know.
Yeah.
And when I say repeat my leaving cert, like I got like 265 points, you know.
Okay.
None of the minimum requirements for the cadetship or anything.
Yeah.
So I said, you know, I'll go back and repeat. You know, I'll see how I go. So I stayed on the reserves for another year, for a year, I suppose, in total. And then when I did repeat my leaving cert, I got 270 points or something like that. Another 5 points more.
Yeah.
Still didn't get the minimum requirements, you know.
Okay.
And I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go in general enlistment. So I did, and I loved it.
Yeah, brilliant. And do you remember, were you trained?
Yeah. So I suppose first day, I went into McKee Barracks, you know, for the assembly, got briefed up, and then we were all put on a bus. I went up to Gormanstown,
Okay.
and there was 40 of us that started, and broken into 4 sections. I'd say we were trained, like, it feels like it was 8 months, do you know? I think we started off in August, and we finished in like April or May.
Okay.
Do you know, so it was a long kind of stretch. You had the Christmas in between that probably, you know, I think you got a week for Christmas or whatever. But we done 7 or 8 months, and obviously 2-star training and then 3-star, and I think by the time we finished, out of the 40 there were 16 left. Do you know, so with a good rate of attrition. But it was like for me it was a very, you know, like you're 18 years of age, right? And like I think we were talking before this, like I left when I was 21, I think. Right. So like, do you know, I'm 36 now, so I'm out of the army 15 years. Do you know, like, and I say I'm out of the army, you know, as though I was kind of a career soldier. I'd done 4 years. But I done it when most people were going into university, you know, and it became a very, you know, life shaping exercise for me, because it's the first time you're doing something for yourself and by yourself, do you know? And it's emotionally testing, it's physically testing, it's mentally testing, and I think you can take an awful lot from that then as you go into, you know, civilian life and beyond, you know, family life even in many cases. And I'm like incredibly grateful for the experience.
Yeah. What was training like for you back then in Gormanstown?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, you know, recruit training is formative, right? To try to break you down and build you back up again.
Definitely.
You know, get you out of bad habits. We had some great characters, you know, in the recruit platoon, and they came from all over Ireland. You know, even though we were going into the 5th Battalion, you know, in McKee. you know, we'd lads from Tyrone, we'd lads from Cork, we'd lads from Galway, you know, different parts of Dublin, you know, really interesting backgrounds, you know, gas characters. You know, we had a one fella, we called him the tank flipper, you know, he was like, bit like a tank, you know, he lasted 6 weeks. You know, and there's all of that kind of, you know, again, like my mum, actually, this is a funny story. When I was joining, I got the date to kind of turn up at McGee, and got it in the post, and my mum the same day had told me that she was going off to Thailand for 6 months. You know, she was like 62 or something, you know. Okay. She rented out the house, kicked me out. Do you know? She said, well, you're not going to be here. So she rented out the house, and so like I couldn't quit. Yeah. You know, I was homeless for the 6 months, and it was great. You know, I suppose training wise, you know, like big kind of things. Obviously, you know, you go down to the Glen for the first time for your 2 weeks before the conclusion of your 2-star. But like for me, it was the last kind of exercise now at the end of 3-star. You know, kind of end up climbing Lugnaquilla, and do you know that like I had a buddy at the time, again I won't use names, but he's still in, actually, I think. He's up in Finner, but you know, kind of before something serious happens, the army chaplain comes in, gives you a talk, you know, and you know, he comes in, and he hands us all out Yorkies, you know, and he tells us, he's like, look, you don't need to eat the Yorkie now. Don't eat the Yorkie now. You'll know when to eat the Yorkie, right? And I'm sitting there down the back on, fuck you, I'm eating the Yorkie, right? So go off and eat the Yorkie, you know. And the exercise kicks off, and anyways, and we were on the ground for maybe 24 hours at this stage already, and kind of a couple of route marches up and down different mountains, whatnot. And we camp into some forest, and it was lashing rain, right? Complete like, washout. And we were sleeping in puddles, do you know, like puddles, like pools of water in the forest, you know. I remember one of the lads, you know, he was kind of had his mat down, but he was like literally in a pool of water, you know. One of the officers going around, what are you doing in the water? You know, get yourself out of the water. It's all right, sir. The water's warm now. I don't want to move. It's grand, you know. So he, like we were given a shout to come down and kind of get equipment for the march, and I was given the GPMG, you know. And I was like, oh Christ, you know, I don't know what I done, but anyways, and you know, given to pack up and whatnot, and off we went. And like the plan was pretty straightforward, you know, go up kind of, you know, whatever route, side of Lugnaquilla, contour around into some village, put in the attack, then you're onto the back of the trucks, and then that's it. That's training over. You're done and dusted. So we're like, oh, that's grand, you know. So we start off and get to the foot of the slope, and it's still lashing rain. There's mist. The mud is sliding down the mountain. You know, we're all in single file. Some of the lads didn't bring their rain gear. You know, so we're going up, and like I'm slipping like every 3 steps. I'm hitting the deck, and the gun's going down, and I'm picking it back up, and I'm going off again, and you know, like it was just horrible, right? And I see everyone taking out their Yorkies, do you know? And I'm like, where's my bloody Yorkie, you know? Like, I really needed it at this stage, you know? And this was obviously the moment the priest had been talking about. And I remember, like, we were maybe an hour into the trudge at this stage, and my shins were in bits. I belted them off rocks and everything. And, you know, my buddy who's just ahead of me turns around, he goes, McCann, do you want a piece of Yorkie? I was like, holy God, you know? So that was a good out trip. And, like, the like that exercise like was mad, you know. So like we couldn't stop. Some of the lads were coming down with hypothermia, so I had to keep moving. The officer got us lost, you know. So there was almost a mutiny on the 2 recce trained NCOs kind of intervened to get us down, and you know. But it was just a wild time, you know. But you know, great experiences overall, and like I think with recruit training, you never know what to expect, and obviously they're keeping you unbalanced all of the time. Yeah, definitely. And that's what civilian life is. and life in general
well,
is very unbalanced. Things
Yeah.
come at you at unexpected times, and people come and go, and things are being roared at you, and all the rest of it. And as I say, as a formative experience, I don't think you get anything better than recruit training.
No, definitely not. And it has to be, I suppose, robust for certain reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, look, we were told that like when you go into a very real situation overseas or whatever, you have to be conditioned in a certain way so that you don't run away, right? These are dangerous situations, dangerous people, and you need to be conditioned in a certain way that you can face up to that and be able to rely on your colleagues and your buddies and so forth and so on. And that's a lesson I took into adult life and business life as well.
No one really makes it through recruit training if they can't be relied on, right? Like that's one thing I noticed.
It's very, very true. And like we all have stories of one or two heads where like a literal danger to themselves and their buddies. But there are also those that they're Mayfainers. And a Mayfainer never makes it in the army because too much is expected of you. And like in civilian life, you can be a Mayfainer, you might not be liked, or maybe you're adored, like who knows? But again, it's one of those things you see in terms of like the formation of a team, the formation of values. It's not something that is conducive to army life at all.
Yeah, definitely. And you finish your training, then you're into the 5th Battalion then? How was life in the 5th Battalion?
I really enjoyed it. I lived in for a couple of months initially because my mum was still in Thailand. She's at the house rented out. Actually we I think the first house we got out, it was in Castleknock. Moved in with 2 army lads. And that was a great experience, just because again you're in your early 20s, very young, the battalion itself, battalion life, look, it was a mix. I'm not going to say it was great,
it's great,
there was weeks where loads would happen. And you'd be doing different exercises and rappelling down buildings and heading out to Baldonnel to jump on helicopters to go up to the Wicklow Mountains. There was all that kind of stuff, and there was other weeks where you were cleaning the lino of floors that were 60 years old, and you're wondering what am I doing with my life. But like that's kind of part of that is part of the overall, I think. It's what you sign up for.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a maintaining of fitness. It's a maintaining of discipline. It's a maintaining of standards. And you have to take that as part of the everyday life. But I enjoyed my time in the battalion. Until obviously I left.
How did the family feel about you deciding to join the army?
Yeah, my mum was very worried about it initially. She, she would have kind of heard stories from her dad about the culture at the time, during the emergency, and he didn't like taking orders when he left, and I think he left in 1945 after kind of the discharge, and became a painter and decorator, and he became self-employed, so there's something in it, but he has his emergent, well, he's brown bread now unfortunately, but obviously, but we still have his emergency medals and and he was very proud at the time that he served, obviously. But my mum, kind of took that, her dad's experience and was like, this is going to happen to you, and don't want this happening to you, and but again, I did a great experience.
I remember getting my letter to join, and my mum actually got the post, because it came in the post, didn't come by email back then. Well, not back then, 2008, right? So not that long ago. But my mum actually hid my letter.
Is that right?
For 2 days. And I was like, where's the letter? I should be here today. What's going on? And it wasn't, I was only 17 at the time, and she was panicking.
Mammies are always worried, But the dads, they think of the pension.
That's right, Everyone's like, it's a great job, great pension. But,
of course, the pension when you signed up, and just I think after I signed up, was totally changed. The 21 rule, I think that was gone by the time I was joining.
So I think when I was in, I think you had to do 21 years, and then you could collect at the age of 54, or you could do 31 years and collect the day you leave after 31. But it used to be just on 21 years, and then you could leave then and collect your pension straight away.
Yeah, that was gone by the time I joined as well.
Yeah.
But the dad was like, you know, because my dad was a printer with the Irish Times for like 30 odd years, you know, and obsessed about pensions, you know. And I told him, I was like, I'm enjoying the army. It's a good pensionable job, son. Yeah, you'll be in that now for like, that's great. And I told him I was leaving, and he's like, what are you doing that for? You know, and like that's just kind of, you know, culture at the time, you know. And his dad actually was with the British Army, and my great granddad was with the British Army on my dad's side. You know, but you know, it was all about the pension, you know, and that actually came from my great granddad, who. He joined the British Army during World War One, you know, done Gallipoli and all that kind of stuff. But he came out with a disability pension and looked after him for the rest of his years. Told that to the son. The son joined up in World War II in Italy, you know, kind of campaigning around Monte Cassino and all that jazz. And same crack with the pension. Went to the dad. You know, there was no war on, so you know, you had to get a pretty steady job. But pension was a big thing.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that as well about your granddad. Was it that became self-employed?
Yeah.
A lot of people, like I know when I left, like I just did not like being told what to do once I left.
Do you know what? It's a real, like, I was 21 right when I left, and I remember one of the jobs I got kind of soon afterwards was with an insurance company. I won't name the name, and I remember getting a phone call from a broker one time, you know, and he was giving out, you know, about something, and something just kind of tweeted me, I don't need to take this anymore, right? And I started pulling them the other way, you know, you know, and they ended up putting me on 3 call handling courses after that. Like, you can't do that, you know. I was like, oh right, yeah, sorry, I didn't realise, you know. You kind of feel, you know, you can answer back now. Not so easy.
I think even when I was in though, I think it was very hard for like people to like manage me. But then even when I left, then I think I became an absolute nightmare to manage. So I had to start my own business.
It's true. I think you do go through this, you know, because like army life, you know, you can have one NCO in one ear, another in the other, telling you 2 different things, you know, like moving your head up and down, you know, and it's obviously not a natural environment, you know. That doesn't happen mostly on Civvy Street, you know. You'd expect that it wouldn't happen, but it's part of that conditioning, you know, of trying to get you used to pressure and kind of different environments and stuff. But when you do go out into Civvy Street, then you know there's this adjustment that it's like, I don't need to take that stuff anymore. Do you know, that's nonsense. Do you know? And somebody's rude, and you're like, well, I can be rude too. You know, and you
there's absolutely, there's like, I feel of the opinion, like there's absolutely no need to be rude. We can sort this out with chatting away.
Some people. That's why I done the call handling courses. Don't do it anymore. Nip that in the bud.
But so you're in now. You've done 3.5 years. And you decided to leave. What was the main driving factor for you leaving? Like,
it's a really good question, and you know, I was one of the first out of the 16 that did go into the battalion to leave, and like I'd say my doubts crept in after about 6 months in the battalion itself. I'd applied for the cadetship for the 3rd time. I came very close on that occasion, to be fair. You know, like in the back of my mind, I was kind of saying, "Geez, well, like, could I do another 2 years of this?" Do you know? But it was something that I wanted to do. I didn't have the leaving cert, right? And I was still about 3 years away from being a mature student. So even if I could qualify, do you know what I mean? It just, you know, it wasn't going to happen to me. In the meantime, I was applying for courses, right? And I was applying for overseas missions. And like, do you know, maybe this, don't know if it's linked to the retention crisis or, you know, whatever it might have been, but you couldn't get a course, right? When like 2006, you know, I'd apply for Irish courses, Arabic courses, you know, GPMG courses, whatever it was, anything that was going, and you're going to have to wait. And the contract was like, you know, you need to do 3 courses in an overseas mission. And I was like, like, give me all the courses, do you know? And I was being told that I might have to wait 1.5 years in the battalion to do a course, right? Or to even be considered. And there was very few overseas missions at the time as well. And you're young, right? And you're just out of recruit training, and you're like, you need to get on. And this was the unique phenomena that was happening around me, kind of during that period, the boom period. Everyone else was going off getting degrees, right? I had friends that, were, becoming engineers, scientists, all the rest of it. They were coming out with good jobs and all the rest of it. Okay. And I wanted the career in the army, but I wanted to move quick. Yeah. And it wasn't happening. Because you can't skip the queue, right? Yeah. And I go into company commander, or even when I was leaving, the battalion commander was asking me, like, well, what can we do for you? And I was like, well, I want to do X, Y, and Z. He goes, I can do this course for you, I can do that for you, I can do this. And I was like, that all means me skipping the queue. Yeah. And if I skip the queue, the lads won't like it. And you can't be that fella. You can't skip the queue. So that was kind of, and I'm just being honest about it, that was my realisation at the time, that I wanted to move quick. I didn't think I was going to be able to move quick.
That was a big problem, because I worked in ops, right? So we were working like ops and training. That's where like the courses would have came in from brigade. We would advertise them and then took in the applications and sent them back then if you got it. And that was a problem that I've seen in the army. It was like, it was always based on seniority. Yeah. It was never. It's not a meritocracy essentially. Now I think they're making changes in terms of like becoming a sergeant and things like that. Like there's points that you have to get and do certain courses. You have to interview. Yeah. But I suppose for the young guy coming in, you just have to wait in the queue. You're probably waiting for 5 years.
And like we might as well talk about this, because it is true and it's quite topical. The lads that stayed went off and done night courses, right? Yeah. A few years after I left, I was in Dublin Business School. I was doing a degree, mature student, and I bumped into an old buddy in recruit training, who was finishing off a law degree, right? Yeah. And he went on, he'd done a master's then in marketing and business and something like that, right? There was another one who has another master's in HR, and he was working in the battalion in HQ, and in some cases these lads were better qualified than the officers. In some cases, better aptitude as well. Yeah. And the NCOs, I have to say, were brilliant. The training NCOs that I had, you trusted them with anything. I genuinely know, like without fail, all the training NCOs that I had, and actually one of them was a client of mine for a while. Oh, okay. I swear to God, only last year. It was a great pleasure, and he set up his own business as well. Right. And they were just fantastic. Some of them have been commissioned through the ranks, and you have to say that's the best way to go about it. Do you know? Yeah. The capacity for the army to and we're talking about a modern context here, where you can do a degree or a course outside of the army. Do you know? And there's a culture there, obviously, of people just doing that anyway. Yeah, definitely. You have to recognise that. You have to recognise that there's opportunities for everybody in civilian life, should they choose to go for it. Yeah. And you need to make sure that the army culture is training and development orientated. You shouldn't have to wait your turn. You shouldn't have to wait 2 years for to learn a foreign language course when it's in the army's interest that you have it. Do you know? Yeah, definitely. That was definitely the route I took. So I think I was 17 when I joined. I think I was 20 and I was on a boxing competition with guys that were doing the law degree at night time, and I was like, I definitely wanted to get educated, because I actually left school to join the army. So I left in January. I was meant to sit the leaving cert in June, I think. So I actually left the army and joined. Left school and joined the army. And then when I was 20, then I was like, I could definitely do something like that. So got the finances together and went to Dublin Business School, wrote a letter and got in as a mature student. But then I done the law degree, and then I got to go to IT Carlow then to do the business degree. But then I still couldn't get the cadetship because I didn't have the leaving cert. Right. So that was like a major stumbling block. Yeah, I didn't understand it. Yeah. Anyway, I just kind of it was the one thing that I couldn't get, right? Leadership is not academic. It's not, right? It's a fluid concept, based on experience, aptitude, values. Values are a huge part of it, right? And I didn't do well in the leaving cert. God love me, right? And I could have waited a few years and scrubbed the floors, until it was my turn. Yeah. But what would I be doing? Do you know?
Yeah.
Like, the world has changed. It's not like my dad's generation, my granddad's generation, my great-granddad's generation.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait.
Just that.
You don't have to wait anymore.
No.
You can get the opportunity for education. You can get the opportunity for experience. You can get all that opportunity. You know, economy's in full employment. Do you know?
Yeah.
And it's a real bugbear of mine because, you know, the guys that have stayed, you know, some of them are doing amazing things in the army.
Definitely.
They genuinely are. And the guys that have left, mostly left due to frustration, career frustration.
Yeah.
Do you know? And amazing talent. And like, here's the gas thing about it, right? Recruit training. Right, you're a recruiter.
Yeah.
Recruit training is the longest job interview you'll ever do in your life.
Yeah,
and it's the hardest job interview you'll ever do in your life.
Yeah.
Right? You are tested in every possible way for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And when you decide to leave, that's a massive, massive decision. That does not come lightly. When I was deciding to leave, I thought about everything that I'd gone through in the years previous, you know, and it becomes such a core part of your identity, even that young, you know, as a teenager, early 20s.
The whole psychological contract.
Absolutely. You know, it's the first thing you've ever done. How am I going to do in civil life? You know, what's the world really like? Do you know? I haven't got a leaving cert. Do you know? I haven't got a degree. It's incredibly scary, right? And the first, like, you know, if there's a hard decision getting into the army, just as hard getting out, and then it's just as hard staying out, right? Because you know, I went into the reserves after I left the 5th, and I'd done that for a year just to make sure that I was like, am I going to be all right here? I might be able to reverse course. But I did find that you know, from a retention perspective, it's often not taken into account, you know, how, like, it must be bad if people are just saying, oh, I'm done, because it's such a core part of who you are and what you've done.
Definitely.
You know,
I actually left, right? And then I think I had like 4 weeks leave or whatever. I started the job, and I was like going in. I think I was doing okay in the job. I wasn't doing great, right? I was still in a trainee kind of phase, and it was a really good company, right? I probably should have stayed, but I panicked. And the day before, 2 days I think before the leave was like due to end, I rang the office, like, oh, can I come back, please? And I ended up going back, staying for a little while, and I was like, I shouldn't have left, you know. I shouldn't have went back. I should have stayed out. You know, I was in a really good company, and then I left again, and then now here we are.
Do you know what the gas thing was? And when I left, you weren't allowed back in. Right? Like, if you walked out the gate,
you're done. You
were done, right? And you had to start recruit training again. If you wanted back in, you had to start from, like, how daft is that? As obviously the policies change now and all the rest of it, but you know, like, it was this kind of thing. It's an arrogance, I found, in terms of, well, if you walk out that gate, you're going to want to come back, you know, and you're going to have to get back in the queue, you know, like, madness. And I know it's changing now, right? And this isn't a slate, you know. I genuinely I love the Defence Forces. They genuinely do. I've got friends, family, you know, but there are just these issues that you're just like, lads, come on, so antiquated, you know. Like, I think for a cultural shift in the retention era, I think they just have to wake up to the fact that it's a different world. Do you know?
They have, I know during COVID they brought in, like, you can go back now. But you can't do anything. I think it's career courses or overseas or promotional courses for 3 years. I actually considered going back again. Because I was like, do I start my own business now? Like, I was panicking, like, because of COVID. It actually turned out to be the best time to start. But I was like, oh, do I go back? Do I not go back? What do I do? But I think, like, the whole 3 year thing, like, before you get promoted again or before you can do another course, is wrong. Now, I've heard stories that that's actually not what's happening in theory, but like, if there was someone ahead of you that, you know,
I'll give you a story, and this is just, and again, we're talking 17 years ago, as a cultural thing, right? So when I was leaving, my big bugbear was, I'm not hanging around. Do you know? I'm not. You know, like, it's not that I'm special, that I don't need to wait. Of course, I've no problem with the queue if that's the culture, but I'm not waiting in it. Do you know? And that was my kind of. There was too much happening elsewhere. When I handed in my discharge, I talked to the company commander. I said, you know, done all the formal bits and bobs, and I was like, good luck, right? And I then had to like the battalion commander obviously wanted to pick my brain as to why it was happening. I was only in the battalion, as you would.
Yeah.
So he brought me in and we had the chat, and he offered me X, Y, and Z, and I was like, no, can't skip the queue. I think I was in it for 6 weeks later. I had 6 weeks to go until I was out.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks before, it was like I got notification I was going to be put on a course, right?
Okay.
CBRN course for the last 2 weeks, and they beasted me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, think about that for a minute, culturally. Do you know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't give the hungry fella a chance to just get on with it.
Yeah.
But he didn't skip the queue. I was offered it, didn't skip it.
Yeah.
And as a point to be like, oh, you want a course, do you?
There's a course.
And there's a course 2 weeks before you go.
Yeah.
And then the door's shut and you can't come back.
Okay.
Just saying, from like, these were all kind of things, and that was 17 years ago now, of course, right? And this doesn't fit into the wider narrative that's out there in the public now. And, that's a whole different ballgame.
No.
But I do feel from a retention, training, development perspective, you can't run an organisation like that. You just can't.
No.
Do you know?
Yeah, I definitely think they're coming on leaps and bounds. There's still a lot of work to be done, right? And I think that's from all aspects. And I think there's a new generation coming up that I think will make that cultural shift, hopefully. And they're doing a lot as well to get more females involved as well, so, which is pretty good. We've got some good guests lined up as well.
Yeah, good. For sure.
But look, so you're in now, you decided to leave, you're out. How did you find then the whole transition then from soldier to civilian?
It was difficult, and it was funny at the same time. So the first job I got after I left was in a phone shop, right, in Bray, and like basic pay was kind of similar to what I had in the army, and like you had commission, but it was the first time I'd kind of seen the difference in terms of work cultures. I'd be out front in the store, right, and people would come in, want to buy a phone, like, oh yeah, what do you want? There you go, sign the contract, and all the rest of it. And a lot of the other guys would be out the back watching DVDs, right, and kind of taking extended lunches. And over kind of a 2-3 month period, you could just see the commission chart. Like I was used to just standing a post. You just stand there, and like that's what you did. You're told to stand there. You stand there, and that's what I did. And I used to get all the passing business. So obviously, then culturally, then in the it started kind of creating a bit of trouble. Kind of. You're taking all our commission, this kind of stuff. But that was an interesting experience. And then I went into the insurance company, and again, that was totally new. I'd never done admin before. I'd never done never worked behind a desk, never kind of done a computer course or anything like that. And I was familiar with computers, but there I was, and starting to get phone calls from brokers and giving out, and as I say, I kind of responded in kind, not knowing that you can't do that. Yeah. And that was a big cultural shift as well. But one of the things that did stay with me from the army was, like the whole concept of national service and community service. I think that's very well enshrined in you, in the Defence Forces. That you always kind of go a bit above and beyond, and that kind of thing. And how you, like, you're working for an insurance company. It's a very big leap from where your machinations were as a kid, and I set up a neighbourhood watch, right? My house got broken into, right? Set up a neighbourhood watch, and just kind of got sucked into that. Set up a senior alert scheme for like pendant alarms for the elderly and all that kind of crack.
Brilliant.
And that brought me into politics, and then I started kind of getting involved in like Fianna Fáil. After the crash. Not very popular. Not before. No, actually, I think I joined up in like March 2008. Okay. Something like that. You know? And but stuck it out. So that was an interesting experience. So
how do you first become like a politician or TD?
You become a member, and I remember a TD knocked on my door. I shouldn't say this, but it's kind of funny. Like you're 21, you don't really know how the world works. I didn't have any family in politics, Yeah. And I had a TD knock on my door, and I was considering joining the Labour Party at the time. Okay. Right? The Labour Party wanted to charge me 15 quid to be a member. Fianna Fáil was free.
Fianna Fáil there was.
Fianna Fáil TD on the door. Yeah, go on and give it a shot, you know. But like at the same time, you know, you want to make sure that that you know the values are similar, right? I was from Sallynoggin, you know, it's a working class area. I figured, you know, Labour would be a good place for me. And then Fianna Fáil was kind of the party of all, and that to me kind of made a lot of sense from like the army as well. You know, like you know, they all kind of slogan like a platoon can only move as fast as slowest man. You know, and I kind of felt Fianna Fáil's political philosophy at the time represented that. That you know, if you look after all elements of society, you make it more stronger, cohesive, and you know. So that was kind of my logic. So you know, you join as a member, as an ordinary member. You pay your fee, and you get invited to events, and you kind of meet people that way. And you know, I really enjoyed it. You know, and I was meeting people from different backgrounds, same way I did in the army. You know, and it was really eye-opening experience that way. And I took a lot of my skills from the army and I brought it to politics. So like hard work, like your ethic, your values, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I became a local election candidate then, not too long afterwards. I think it was like 25 then at that stage. They kind of got selected to run as a candidate. Young, And I, at the same time I was kind of doing kind of Dublin Business School for the education piece, and then ran in the local elections, lost. You know, that's resilience.
That's just how it is.
I took redundancy actually to fund the campaign, you know. But again, like, you know, all of these steps, right? Like, a big decision to leave the army. Big thing in your identity becomes like, it makes it easier. Do you know? Definitely. Like when you need to make bigger steps later on in life, you say, well, that was okay there, you know. Like, and as I say, you know, recruit training does give you a large sense of self-trust. You know, you build up trust in yourself in order to just make decisions, right? And like all of these different steps in my life, I think stem from that experience of recruit training, because, you know, deciding to put your name and face in a leaflet after, you know, 2008, you know, and go knocking on doors, so huge, you know. I remember the first door I knocked on, and guy comes to the door, lovely house, Mercedes in the drive, you know. Do you know what you can do? You can effing see that tree. I swear to God, told me to, you know, string myself up on it. It wasn't as polite as that. And you know, you're like, oh no, just trying to help, you know. And that's, look, that's politics now, and you know, it is what it is. But do I regret not being elected? God, yeah. Like, public service has been a big thing for me for a long time. Would I go back to it? Maybe in the future, you know. I done a lot of kind of board work then in that period. The National Youth Council of Ireland, kind of Volunteer Ireland, different partnership boards and all that kind of stuff. Great experience, and again, this is, you know, it's just putting the hand up and just saying, give it a bash, do that, and try and help where you can and whatnot. And I suppose then, kind of after the local elections, I didn't have a job, you know, and a friend of mine had a new startup. I was pretty good at getting myself in the papers, you know, different things, and I kind of taught myself that, you know, kind of through the community stuff. And the first job I got was with a startup, an Australian startup, and you know, learned an awful lot from that. Also learned an awful lot about throwing in the deep end commercially. You know, it was a very small team. You know, one of the guys was away. The other person was out sick for a period, and it was basically me running the show for a couple of months, you know, making sure the money was coming in, making sure kind of partnerships were being agreed, and all that kind of stuff. Did I know what I was doing? Absolutely not, right?
Just muddle your way through.
Does it bring you back to recruit training, not having a clue what you're doing and just getting through it, you know? You know, that was a great experience. Got a job then with a large event company that was very formative in how global operations works, and obviously the technology industry then as a whole. That was just fantastic experience. I was working in Hong Kong, in Portugal, obviously in Dublin. I was working with government ministers and all sorts of great like celebrities. Had lunch with a cyclist. Actually, it's a funny story. I'll tell you. We were outside in the kind of the VIP, well, not VIP, it was like the speaker lounge or whatever, you know, and there was like where you kind of have your lunch and whatnot, and I'm sitting there just minding my own business, and this fella comes out all dressed in white. I thought he was a chef, right? And I was like, oh, you're on your break, grab a seat there, nice to see you. He sits down, and I was like, what do you do yourself? He asked me what do I do, and I work for the event, whatever. And I was like, oh, you're just out from the kitchen, are you? Oh yeah, just getting a bit of lunch. I was like, very good. And he goes, oh, do you know what time such and such is happening at? And I was like, I don't know. And you have to go to the stage at that time. I was like, oh right, you're speaking, are you? Yeah. I was like, oh right, what are you speaking on? Like a sport performance, kind of mentality, that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, very good. And I was kind of looking at him. I was like, he does look familiar. Right, and it was Chris Froome, the Tour de France cyclist.
Okay, yeah.
Right, and he was like literally like 10-time Tour de France winner or something. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, you're Chris Froome, aren't you? He goes, yeah. And he was going on holidays to Brazil and with the family after the conference and that. And I was like, oh, that'll be grand. You get a bit of a break, kind of rest the legs. Oh no, we cycle. We kind of cycled every day, And I was like, what are you going on holidays for? Sports performance, Yeah. But that was a great experience, and you just kind of meet people as you go. And so from that then, again, you left the army, you're right. Yeah. The big decision, big part of your identity. You do politics, you lose, big part of your identity. You kind of go into all of these things, and I was like, what's one more shot? And I decided I'd set up my own business then at that stage, which obviously what I was doing for the event company was public relations and promoting the event and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, what, I can probably do this for myself, and set up Clearstory and. Kind of that's where we're at.
How did you go? Like, did you already have some clients on board before you decided to start Clearstory? Did you have like some good connections?
So funny enough, I had one client before I did, and similar to yourself, I tried another agency before with kind of business partner. It didn't quite work. We were very Irish focused and whatnot. So I said, look, I'm gonna create a new brand, see how this goes. And I took a friend of mine had another conference happening in Dublin. Okay. He gave me a free stand.
Oh, brilliant!
And I got my first client from that, which was like $1,000 a month. Do you know?
Yeah, perfect.
And I was like, oh, happy days. And I handed in my notice then. So like, like in my mind, I was kind of saying like 500 quid in savings. So like, do you know what I mean? So I took that. I took my last paycheck. And that was going to be the plan, $1,000 a month, give myself 3 or 4 months. If we can get another 1 or 2 clients, and it'll be all right. And I remember I went out to the last conference then in Hong Kong, and I'd been there for 2 years. I kind of built up a few pals, and I was just saying goodbye to people in the last day, kind of last hour, and just saying goodbye to a couple of journalists and stuff. And one of them said, oh, we hear you're leaving. I was like, yeah. Can I introduce you to someone? He said, yeah. Introduced me to a Thai businessman who's a very good friend now. And he had a tech conference happening in Bangkok.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, we hear you're leaving. Can you help us with this? And I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah. And that became my second client, right? And then like half an hour later, saying goodbye to somebody else. And she had a business network for female entrepreneurs in Singapore, and she became a third client. Do you know? So I was already kind of happy out, and once you have ground at your feet, then you can kind of pay yourself. You have a little bit more room then to think about kind of what's going to happen next, and you start kind of planning and fleshing things out. And the journey over the last 6 years has been like incredible. I've really, really enjoyed it. You know, great adventures.
Yeah. Did you start out on your own, or did
Started off my own,
when did you decide to kind of hire your first staff
so
member?
so I started off. I left the job on the 30th of July, and I hired my first person in March. So 7 months later.
Okay.
I had an office in Harold's Cross for a little period, and like there was a guy next door who was like a therapist. God love him, because I'd be bawling the walls out of it, I was having a bad day, and he came into me one day and he was like, do you mind just calm it down a bit, losing the clients here, you know. But there was another guy then across the way, and we started up together, and his company is doing brilliantly now, huge company now, and it's just great to see, you know. Yeah,
definitely. And how did you, when you're making your first hire, how did you make sure that was the right person for you? And are they still with you today?
They are, and she is our senior director, and a force of nature and tour de force, you know. So she's fantastic. And she, like, I suppose it's a big thing, your first employee, because
definitely is.
You have to depend on them, but they also have to depend on you. You know, so there's a mutual trust element there, and you're bringing them on the journey, and you know, it comes back to self-trust, especially when you're building any business. And as a subsequent back to the army again, right? You have to trust that you have it in you to get to point A, right? And then on to point B and point C. And as part of that, then you have to make sure that, you know, you're motivating people as part of that they trust you, and that any promises that are made are delivered, and so forth and so on. And again, would I have had those insights if I had gone into the army? Probably not. Do you know? And would any of it have been possible? I don't know. But you know, like the team, we're a team of 14 now, and you know, I try to relay the values that I learned when I was 18, 19, into that team as we go. That as a unit, as a company, we're all together. We look after each other. That if somebody's sick, we cover for them. And as a result, if you become sick, they cover for you, you know, and vice versa. And you know, that cohesiveness brings performance, and it brings trust. You know, we're totally flexible remote work, right? I trust them all implicitly. Do you know? And obviously some people flake, or something happens personally. We try and do our best to you know, exactly. Well, obviously, if you're flaking, you get a kick in the arse.
Definitely.
That's only fair. That's only fair. But things happen in life, you know, and you know, like, you can't plan for these things. But it matters a great deal to people to know that, you know, they can rely on their teammates and you know, the leadership to help them. Yeah,
definitely. And Clearstory, right? So you're 6 years, 7 years?
6 years now.
6 years. Team of 14?
Team of 14.
Yeah, that's brilliant. But what does Clearstory actually do? Like, what?
So we're an international public relations agency for early stage and scaling companies, mostly in technology. So what does that mean? So you know, you've got a new kind of technology or food and drink brand, right? And like, you know, it can be kind of fintech, you know, educational technology, ARV, or you know, clean tech. You know, we work with the plethora of all kind of technologies. And in the early stages, you're looking to do a couple of things. You're trying to acquire customers. You might be looking to acquire investors, or generate interest from investors. You might be looking to, you know, educate the market on what you guys do, or just basically make, you know, whatever markets that you're looking to get into, just, you know, kind of establish a presence there. And we would do what you would call reputation building. So we take something that is unknown, and we get it known in the market, and we do that pretty much around the world. So we've got clients in Thailand, in Singapore, Switzerland, Mongolia, you know, Kuwait, US, Canada, you know, Ireland, obviously the UK, pretty much all over the world. And we solve complex problems, reputationally, and obviously from a reputation building perspective. I've got many a story, you know, obviously I can't tell you under NDA.
Interrupt there, we're just 5-minute warning there, like we're just finishing up.
Oh,
great, no worries at all.
Nice.
So that's at the core of what we do. We build reputations, and we do it well.
Oh, brilliant. And then Everhaze then is a new venture, is it?
So Everhaze is a problem that is a company that emerged from a problem when I started Clearstory, which was not being able to find kind of one tool for like agency management. So like your media database, your media monitor, your content management, your kind of tracking, your email sending, all that kind of stuff. You're using different suppliers for all of that. It's very messy from a workflow perspective. It's very messy from a capacity planning perspective, from a, especially if you're like flexible remote work or anything like that. It's a nightmare. There's folders everywhere. Like the life of an agency owner and people who work in agency is chaos.
Yeah, definitely.
And Everhaze is a SaaS tool basically to consolidate all of that, to improve workflows, to capacity planning, like media list management, the whole lot in one platform. And now we're integrating all the latest AI into it, obviously to kind of help, kind of get rid of some of the more menial aspects of it. But that's effectively what it is. It's
Yeah, AI is definitely changing the game for like I suppose startups. I suppose, and they'll probably
it's
expand pretty quickly.
Yeah, like you would have seen the story of the Irish Times publishing, the AI generated kind of the article.
Check on the AI detector.
I had an interesting call with kind of head editor at Forbes only a couple of months ago. We were kind of like we pitched some Everhaze and we were kind of talking about it, and it's very fluid.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows what's going to happen. If you took it in its literal sense, in terms of our industry, you could be somebody who goes to your AI, write me a press release about client A and the announcement, and if and when the AI gets good enough, you can train that AI on your style of writing, and how you form kind of press releases and all the rest. It'll take that. It'll, you'll issue that to a news organisation. An AI might be on the receiving end of that. It might take that story, it might rejig it, and it'll publish it on the website.
Okay. Jeez.
Right?
Yeah.
The issue with all of that, of course, is, first of all, the Irish Times has been caught. Like, you don't know what's real. Disinformation is huge, right? The risk of disinformation, because you don't know the actor on the other side, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, communication of nuance and significance is not something AI can do well.
No.
It can maybe, take a story like that and it'll publish it, but it could do it at the absolute worst time. In terms of what might be happening in the news cycle, there's all that kind of stuff. And like there's a million other considerations, reputationally, like defamation and, a whole host of other things, So we are flagging AI as like a content assist. You
can't rely on it.
You can't rely on it. And
at the moment, anyway.
At the moment. Well, like GPT-4 is pretty powerful, in terms of its kind of abilities, but again, there's still major issues with it, and it's all very much early days. And we're kind of consulting widely with agency owners, journalists, industry bodies as well, to just keep an eye on the debate. It's not so like everyone jumped on it, and including ourselves, launching the capability. But now you got to build the brakes. And even though it's like the core of the technology isn't, us, it's open AI, right? And that's where most of this AI is coming from, other kind of larger providers, conglomerates. You do still have a responsibility to taper it so that it's not doing harm.
Grand. Brilliant. Glad to hear things have gone well. And look, just last question then. The military as a whole then, would you recommend it as a career for someone in the early stages?
I would. I especially think, today, the army can build conditioning for a lifetime. That CV life just, I don't think, brings. It's a very unique experience. I'd recommend, the army as a career to anybody. I had a really positive experience, and I know kind of there was frustrations there. It's all part of the kind of the ups and downs, but I loved it. It's definitely done me a world of good.
Really quick then, what do you think the benefits of an organisation, the benefits of hiring ex-military personnel for organisations?
So work ethic is huge. I think you get that. Values. Values are ingrained, into the soul with army personnel. Adaptability, ability to learn and develop quickly, leadership, there's just a whole plethora of soft and hard skills that somebody with an army background can bring that you won't find in any other career line.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, that wraps it up. Thanks very much, James. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.